where the person you're debating has, you may want to write things about them. They have done things that you want to say that are true, that were bad, but you don't want to say it to their faces. At least I don't. I'm a polite person. One of them was Al Sharpton. I was on Politically Incorrect with him one time, and we were talking about some phony race crime out in L.A. that the cops had engaged in. And all day I kept saying to myself, you have to mention Tawana Brawley. You have to mention Tawana Brawley. I don't really enjoy doing that. I just did the Dr. Phil show with Scott McClellan, whom I completely justly make fun of and attack in my current book, Guilty. You know, everything I say is true in the book, but that doesn't mean I want to face the person. And the one I was least looking forward to, because it's the most egregious, was a debate with Janet Reno. You know, how can you not mention that this is the Attorney General responsible for killing the most Americans?
Exactly. Ruby Ridge, right?
Yeah, so those are the ones I really hate. Other than that, I like the debate.
Well, I was talking to you last night, and you said you're a late night writer, and you were going to slam somebody who I've slammed and who none of us here like.
It's going up at 6 o'clock tonight.
The Keith Olbermann article.
I hate that guy.
Yeah, we were not fans of Olbermann here.
Oh my God.
Well, I've been meaning to getting around to writing this, but other things were going on, and he's not that important. But if you've ever watched any 2 nights of his show, you know that Keith Olbermann went to Cornell. He's constantly talking about going to Cornell, about having an Ivy League education. Also, if you've ever watched any 2 nights of Olbermann, you know that he goes for these lame-ass gotcha moments where he will catch someone in the most minuscule mistake. As, for example, when I put in the column when he corrected Charlie Rangel, said inferred, but he meant implied.
Oh, God.
So that is a correction Olbermann cannot let pass. He cannot mention George Orwell without giving the true name, Eric Blair. He could not do that any more than a neurotic could walk past a sink without washing his hands. And so I must say, this is not something people who actually went to good schools do. So I had to point out that Keith Olbermann didn't go to the Ivy League Cornell. He went to the Ag School, which isn't something I would normally bring up or make fun of. And by the way, the farmers and the veterinarians who go to the Ag School are totally cool. But the SATs are obviously massively lower for the Ag School. The acceptance rate massively higher. And in point of fact, the Ag School isn't an Ivy League school. The Ivy League school is the Arts and Sciences Cornell. It's the only school at Cornell that grants a BA. The Ag School is more closely associated with, other land grant colleges in New York, like Morrisville Agriculture School, to whom they have a transfer program. This guy is a total and complete fraud, and he's constantly going around bragging about my Ivy League education. As much as loathsome as Jonathan Alter and Frank Rich are, people who actually went to good schools would never sneer at other people for going to not so good schools. That's
so you had to call him out.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So basically, Keith Olbermann went to the apex tech of Ivy League schools.
Yes, he went to the one with classes on milking and bovine management.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I bet he put that rubber glove on a few times to do that pregnancy check on a few horses.
He's just a nerd, man.
I want to...
Screaming, pretentious, may not realize it, but he's gay. Screaming, angry, 57-year-old woman trapped in a man's body.
Wow.
And having him go around claiming he went to the Ivy League school at Cornell is more than we should have to put up with.
Wait, Ann, is he 57 years old?
No, but he seems like a 50... I have no idea how old he is. He just seems like a 57-year-old woman.
Is he married or anything?
I can't imagine.
I want to get into a few things concerning our beloved president, Obama.
Love the Obama.
Do you? There's a few things that have been popping up lately, and first of all, how long does he have to be in office before he can start being responsible for what is being done? Because it seems like, well, it's only been so long and we have to blame everything on the past administration and the mess he stepped into. I mean, obviously things like the market have no faith in what he's been doing.
Right.
When will he have to start accepting responsibility that he is the president, and when things aren't going well, it's now his fault and his problem?
That is a great question. I think around the year 2020.
2020? All right. Yeah, I just wanted some kind of ballpark figure there. And what do you think about this this letter written to Russia about let's make a deal about the missile shield over Europe in exchange for helping out with Iran and their nuclear technology, and then Russia pretty much saying, we don't haggle like that. I think it made him look silly and weak, weaker than everybody thought he even was internationally. And it kind of shows his foreign policy. That is a giant mistake, and I barely read about it.
Yeah, it's almost as if we elected a completely inexperienced president.
Almost.
Who did way over his head.
Wow, you would think that if it,
you would think that.
Let me ask a question. Let me play devil's advocate here, because is it possible? Because again, he reached out to Ahmadinejad and also now Russia.
It's reaching out to everybody.
But I mean, both
except to Russia.
Yeah. It's reaching into my pocket. That's where he's reaching.
Typically, Iran and Russia have not been close U.S. allies. Is it possible that it was dumb to reach out to them, but both of them are seeing this as an opportunity to make what could be, like they say Kennedy possibly cut a deal with Khrushchev on many years ago.
Yeah, but look how far that had to go before he cut a deal. This guy writes a letter pretty much giving away Europe's security, or this at least the guise of security. If you look at what Reagan did, he scared the crap out of the Russians with this Star Wars system that made Russia pretty much break themselves defending against something that didn't even exist. So what you got to do is let them think you're building this shield for Europe against missiles, because, believe me, Russia's been very concerned about that. Don't tip your hand and say, we'll give it to you if you help us with Iran. It's such poor foreign policy.
But is it possible that Iran and Russia basically have used this as just an opportunity, instead of doing the right thing, to just kind of use it to make the U.S. look weak?
He should have known that they would do that then. They're known as people that don't treat us fairly when it comes to negotiating.
We shouldn't be involved in Europe's defense anyway. Europe has done nothing but show ingratitude.
We have
Muslim now.
Exactly.
No, this is stunningly bad. I mean, Bush reached out to Russia, but you don't lead by offering the opponents everything they could possibly want.
Yeah.
And by the way, despite Hollywood movies to the contrary, I write about this in my current book, Guilty. Kennedy's meeting with Khrushchev was one of the great foreign policy disasters of our time, as has been described now, 20, 30 years later, because the press was covering for him at the time, as they're going to be covering for Obama. When he met with Khrushchev, he was batted around by Khrushchev. Khrushchev was belligerent and angry, and Kennedy didn't know what to say. Kennedy was completely shaken and white-faced. Khrushchev was on the top of his game, and in his autobiography he wrote, "This was wonderful. I realized that the Americans were being led by a weak and useless president." And when Kennedy came out to meet with an exclusive interview with James Reston of the New York Times, shaking, pale, the whole staff was demoralized and depressed. Jim Reston just lied about it and said, "Oh, our confident president had a good meeting with Khrushchev. No gains were won." Khrushchev realized what a wimp Kennedy was, moves missiles into Cuba, and then and the Cuban are the Bay of Pigs, which Kennedy does, but gives the Cubans no air cover. Khrushchev realized he was dealing with an imbecile, and that's when he moves the weapons in. So then Kennedy gets praised for his brilliant handling of a crisis he himself created.
And then meanwhile, when all is said and done and the missiles are out of Cuba, we then had to pull missiles out of Turkey.
Thank you. Yes.
So they won. In the long run, they wound up getting the advantage.
That's right. That's all Khrushchev ever wanted. He also wrote in his memoirs it was absurd. He didn't care about Cuba. He didn't care about those missiles. He just wanted our missiles pulled out of Hungary.
Yep, and that's exactly what happened. So, unbelievable.
And that's what we have again. And once again, we'll have our watchdog media, watchdog for the people, acting as guard dog for the government.
And Barney Frank talking about cutting the budget for the military. Again, such a Democratic thing to do that just takes any bite out of whatever tiger is left of the United States. It leaves the Republicans, once they do regain power, because they always do, because the Democrats just are incapable of running a country, it leaves them having to rebuild the country's military and the respect in the world again.
No, that's absolutely right. And on top of that, I consider it amazing and appalling that Barney Frank can show his face in public.
Oh, I know.
It shows you how much media power, how much power the media has, let me put it that way, that Barney Frank, along with Chris Dodd, Bill Clinton, was pushing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac into making these preposterous loans, forcing banks to abandon all business judgment. That is the nuclear time bomb that went off, that set off the current recession and is destroying bank after bank across America. There is video of Barney Frank standing up, denouncing Republicans who are complaining about these politically correct rules for lending, and yet he's still out there, giving us his foreign policy advice.